Very warm welcome to BBC News, broadcasting to our viewers in North America and around the globe. My name is Mike Embley. Our top stories. The Russia investigation gets closer to the White House as the U.S. Attorney General becomes the first member of President Trump's cabinet to be questioned. Thousands rally in southern Brazil for their former president, Lula da Silva, urging an appeals court to overturn his conviction for corruption. Fears of a major eruption in the Philippines after fresh activity from Mount Mayon. And the South African jazz musician and campaigner against apartheid, Hugh Masekela, has died. He was 78. Hello. The U.S. Attorney General, the country's top prosecutor, has become the first member of President Trump's cabinet to be questioned by the special counsel investigating allegations of Russian interference in the presidential election. It's understood Jeff Sessions was also questioned about whether the Trump team colluded with Russia and then tried to impede the Russia inquiry. And the Washington Post is reporting that Special Counsel Mueller is seeking to interview the president as well. Let's cross live to Washington, D.C., speak to the BBC's David Willis. David, what is the very latest on this?
Well, you're absolutely right that indeed the Justice Department, Mike, confirming today that Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, was interviewed by Robert Mueller's team investigating alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. That interview taking place last week. The interview with the special counsel Robert Mueller's team was conducted. It's been reported in the presence of Jeff Sessions' lawyer. It makes Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, the first member of the Trump cabinet to be interviewed by Robert Mueller's team. And that team, as well as investigating allegations of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, is also, of course, looking into whether the president obstructed justice, basically, by firing the former FBI director James Comey. Now, one of the things that Jeff Sessions was involved in was a meeting in the Oval Office to discuss the firing of James Comey, apparently. So that's certainly an area of interest to Robert Mueller and his team. Meanwhile, the suggestion here very much that this investigation is moving closer and closer to the White House. Unconfirmed reports, as you mentioned, that the special counsel's team may be looking to interview the president at some stage and possibly quite imminently as part of this investigation.
And amid all those rumors that have been going on for quite some time now, the White House might try to shut down the Russia investigation. The President's spokeswoman, Sarah Sanders, making it clear we will be fully cooperative.
That's right, and the President himself has said that in the past, although he seemed to backtrack a little recently when he was asked point blank, would you sit down for an interview with Robert Mueller's team. He said that there has been no collusion, and as far as he was concerned, such an interview would probably be unnecessary. He's described the Mueller inquiry as a witch hunt and a hoax, and it will clearly there will be a call for ground rules to be laid out very carefully in advance if the President is to sit down with a member or members of Robert Mueller's team.
David, thank you very much for that. On Wednesday, judges in Brazil will decide whether or not to uphold a corruption conviction against the former president, Lula da Silva. He's been found guilty of accepting a penthouse apartment as a bribe, but he has millions of supporters who say the charges are politically motivated. Our South America correspondent, Katie Watson, reports from Brazil.
José points out his old house. For more than 20 years, he lived in this favela. But thanks to a housing program created when Lula was president, he moved into a brand new block of flats next door. He's grateful but pragmatic.
Para mim, o governo dele His government was good when it comes to housing, because lots of people had no means to live well, and now they live in their own house. But in general, politicians are pretty dirty. I'm not going to judge whether he's innocent or not, but if he really hasn't done anything wrong, he'll prove it.
On the other side of Sao Paulo, Tomé is angry. He owns a construction company. He's ashamed of the corruption scandals that have engulfed Brazil's politicians and business people in recent years, and feels Lula is the biggest symbol of all that's gone wrong.
Brazilians are fed up with the political class in Brazil. We can't put up with any more. They're all rich millionaires and billionaires. Lula started his political career as a trade unionist, a man of the people, fighting corruption. But he managed to institutionalize corruption. Nobody's robbed as much in the history of Brazil as during the period of the Workers' Party.
But in Porto Alegre, members and supporters of the Workers' Party are out in force. Lula's face and his presence is everywhere. People arriving at this camp have come from all over Brazil to be here for Lula. They're not just here to support his court battle, though. They're also here to voice support for his run as president in the elections later this year, a race he's currently leading. Elections without Lula are fraudulent, reads this banner. His supporters say there's no evidence against him, and it's just a way to stop him becoming president again.
Lula is representing nowadays, maybe the only option, the political option that the working class has in Brazil.
Tenho certeza que o Lula não será enviado à prisão.
I'm pretty sure he won't be sent to prison, but if Lula is found guilty, he'll become a martyr.
Ele se tornará mártir.
Nobody knows which way the judges will vote on Wednesday, but whatever their decision, authorities are preparing for strong reactions on both sides. Katie Watson, BBC News in Porto Alegre, Brazil.
Tens of thousands of people in the Philippines have been forced to flee their homes as the country's most active volcano keeps on firing huge plumes of ash and lava. The army has been drafted in to help clear the danger area around the Mayon volcano. Experts are warning a hazardous eruption could happen anytime. Andrew Plant has the latest.
Time-lapse footage of Indonesia's most active volcano, its latest eruption shooting molten rock high into the air. Its ash cloud billowing across the landscape, just a taste, scientists believe, of what's to come.
An eruption is now rather imminent within the next few hours or days. And it also means that the danger zone around the volcano has now been increased from 6 kilometers, it's now 8 kilometers.
Over the past few days, more than 50,000 people have evacuated, with soldiers drafted in and trucks ferrying villages to 46 camps outside the danger zone. But some have risked returning, despite the increasing activity.
My house is about 2 kilometers inside the danger zone. I know I'm not allowed back because it's dangerous, but I need my livelihood. I have no choice.
The volcano is in a largely agricultural region of the Philippines, about 300 kilometers southeast of Manila. There are no reports of injuries, but schools have been closed and flights cancelled. Mayon is a near-perfect cone, popular with tourists, almost 2.5 kilometers tall and highly volatile, with 51 recorded eruptions. Officials are closely monitoring this latest activity. They're warning people to wear face masks and goggles as they wait to see what this volcano has in store. Andrew Plant, BBC News.
Let's go live now to the BBC's Howard Johnson in the Philippine capital, Manila. As Andrew was saying there, people have been keeping a close eye on Mount Mayon for quite some time. What's the current situation?
Yes, Mike, Mount Mayon hasn't been letting up overnight. It's been emitting more smoke, more lava. It's had huge lava fountains spraying into the sky. Residents describe the sound of the rumbles coming from the volcano as that of a jet plane coming into land. Now, scientists have been watching this carefully, as you say, over the last week. It has gone up from when it first started erupting more than a week ago to this day. It's gone up on the scale from 3 to 4 on a scale where 5 is the highest threat level. The fear now is that it could explode in the coming days, a hazardous eruption, as scientists are warning. If that happens, then we could see that the current exclusion zone, which is now 9 kilometers, could be extended further.
And Howard, we've had people, thousands of people evacuated, of course, but also other people coming back, some in this largely agricultural area because they need their livelihoods, as the man was saying in the report there. Also, I think some people come in just to see it, tourists.
That's correct, yes. This exclusion zone of 9 kilometres was extended yesterday from 8 kilometres to build in an extra kilometre buffer zone, a no man's land where they are trying to stop people from going back to their villages. Apparently there's a big cockfight that's going on at the moment. People are interested in going back to see that. There's also the need to go back and tend to the land. What we've seen in the past is that the authorities have had to warn away tourists and photographers, amateur photographers, who've flocked to this site to take pictures. And if you look on social media, there are lots and lots of images being captured of this volcano, a very popular volcano indeed for filmmakers and photographers.
Howard, thank you very much for that. Let's quickly round up some more of the main news for you. At least 22 people have been killed, many others wounded by 2 car bombs that exploded in quick succession in the Libyan city of Benghazi. The attack hit worshippers leaving a mosque. Both military personnel and civilians among the victims. Not yet clear who was behind the attack. 2 children have been killed, 17 wounded in a shooting at a school in the US state of Kentucky. It's the second school shooting in the states this week. A suspect believed to be 15 years old has been led away by police. Scores of children were seen running out of a building at Marshall County High in the town of Benton. The state governor, Matt Bevin, said it was unbelievable that a shooting could happen in a small, close-knit community. Venezuela's government has ordered fresh elections before the end of April. The president, Nicolas Maduro, thousands of supporters at a rally, he is ready to seek another 6-year term. His potential challenges are in self-imposed exile or in jail, allegedly for inciting during anti-government protests. Stay with us if you can on BBC News. Much more to come, including this. We'll be exploring the mysteries of the Antarctic from what could be the world's largest wildlife sanctuary.
The people of Saigon have just heard that at last there is to be a ceasefire. The reaction of American servicemen was predictable.
I'm going home. I'm going home.
Demonstrating for Mike Gatting and his rebel cricket team were attacked with tear gas at a pond by police dogs. Anti-apartheid campaigners say they will carry on the protests throughout the tour.
They called him the Butcher of Lyon. Klaus Altmann is being held on a fraud charge in Bolivia. But the West Germans want to extradite him for crimes committed in wartime France. There he was the Gestapo chief Klaus Barbie.
Millions came to bathe as close as possible to this spot, a tide of humanity that's believed by officials to have broken all records.
Very good to have you with us on BBC News. The latest headlines. The US Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, has become the first member of President Trump's cabinet to be questioned by the special counsel investigating allegations of collusion with Russia. Supporters of Brazil's former president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, have demonstrated in the city of Porto Alegre, urging an appeals court to overturn his conviction for corruption. At least 100 young women have now spoken up in a court in Michigan, telling their personal stories of sexual abuse, several of them members of the US Olympic gymnastics team. The molester was the team's doctor. Larry Nassar sat in court day after day, listening to one victim after another take the stand. He's already in jail on child pornography charges. He's admitted 10 more criminal counts. He could face life in prison. The BBC's Rajini Vaidyanathan has been following proceedings.
I think there's been a real sense of collective empowerment in the last 7 days or so as women have been sharing testimony. What started out as something like 98 women who had signed up to either submit written statements or actually appear before the judge here now turned into 158 women who wanted to come forward and tell their stories. The judge has described these women as sister survivors. It's not every day that women feel that they can share their stories of sexual abuse, let alone relive their ordeal while their attacker sits in court a few metres away from them.
Rajini Forrest there in Michigan. A research mission to the depths of the Antarctic's waters has revealed unique ecosystems so rare the scientists say they deserve special protection. Campaigners hope this will help build the case for creating the world's largest wildlife sanctuary. That would ban all fishing in a large part of the Weddell Sea and around the Antarctic Peninsula. Our environment correspondent Claire Marshall travelled to the area on board a Greenpeace ship. She sent this exclusive report.
Antarctica, the most remote continent in the world, encased in glacial ice thousands of feet thick. It's still largely unexplored, and we know even less the icy seas that ring it.
Copy, copy.
Now, machines are making it possible for us to catch a glimpse. A mini submarine is taking marine biologist Dr. Susan Lockhart down into the Antarctic deep. Above is a land of frigid ice. Below is a thriving mass of life.
Oh, that's really pretty.
No light penetrates this deep. Plants can't grow. These are all animals. Then it was my turn to go down with pilot John. We drop much deeper. More than 1,000 feet down, we find a wall of life. Sponges and corals, sea stars, feather stars, all thriving in complete darkness. A robot arm captures samples. Some of these species have never been filmed before. They're threatened by an increase in fish in the region. Too soon, we have to leave.
So there's a storm apparently brewing on the surface, so the ship just asked us to come up.
22, do you have a visual? Over.
We surface very close to some icebergs.
Yeah, copy that. We may just have to nudge some ice out of the way as well. Over.
That'll be a massive chunk of ice hitting our little sub.
At last, the diver gets a hook on our sub. But then the crane breaks. We're stranded for an hour. It feels good to finally be down.
Oh, that's nice.
Probably more there.
We gathered evidence of a unique ecosystem that deserves protection.
It was really exciting, really dense seabed full of life, and huge diversity, and also organisms living together creating a 3D structure so that more organisms can live, and these can be very vulnerable to disturbance and they need special protection.
No one can deny that this region needs protecting, but what is the best way to do it? Is a line on a map really going to make much difference? And who is going to police anything out here?
The proposal to protect all these creatures and their world will be heard by the Antarctic nations in October. Claire Marshall, BBC News, the Antarctic Peninsula.
A world away from all that, it is awards season in Hollywood, and the nominations for the 90th Academy Awards have been announced. Leading the field, the American fantasy romance The Shape of Water, with 13 nominations, including for Best Picture. It's British star Sally Hawkins up for Best Actress. The Best Actor category also dominated by British stars. Gary Oldman, Daniel Day-Lewis and Daniel Kaluuya all in the running. And Meryl Streep, already with 3 Oscars to her name, has been nominated for the 21st time in her career. This time, of course, for The Post. Our arts editor, Will Gompertz, has more.
Guillermo del Toro's amphibian fantasy love story, The Shape of Water, leads the way with 13 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture.
Ever to be housed in this facility.
So, Mildred Hayes, why did you put up these billboards?
A category which also sees the critically acclaimed dark comedy thriller 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri nominated.
Actual crime. I want to go where culture is.
As well, as the coming-of-age drama Ladybird.
Sure, where writers live in the woods.
Good to see another brother around here.
Also shortlisted is the horror mystery Get Out.
Yes.
And a couple of British World War II films, Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk.
When will the lesson be learned?
And Joe Wright's The Darkest Hour, which sees Winston Churchill struggling in his early days as Britain's wartime Prime Minister.
When your head is in its mouth!
Several of the scenes in The Darkest Hour were shot in a replica of this place, the Churchill War Rooms in Westminster, where I am joined by Terry White, editor-in-chief of the film magazine Empire. Terry, welcome. We're going to go through the runners and riders, starting with Best Film. Will Darkest Hour win?
I actually don't think it will. I think we're looking at a win for Shape of Water, the Guillermo del Toro fantasy film, but actually the film I think should win is Get Out.
Which has a British rising star, Daniel Kaluuya, in the lead role. He gets a Best Actor nomination.
I'm certain I was never
along with Daniel Day-Lewis for Phantom Thread, Timothée Chalamet for Call Me By Your Name,
I'm tired of doing the impossible for the ungrateful.
Denzel Washington for Roman J. Israel Esquire,
Really? Yes?
and Gary Oldman, The Darkest Hour.
I sit in this chair!
Well, Terry, that's quite a list for Best Actor, quite a lot of stories. Will Daniel Day-Lewis win yet another Oscar in what might be his last film? Will Gary Oldman win for Churchill, for Darkest Hour, in the Cabinet War Rooms? Or will it be somebody else?
I think this is Gary Oldman's year. How he's never won an Oscar is beyond me, and Darkest Hour feels like his finest moment.
The Best Actress category is going to be really competitive. So, who will win? Sally Hawkins for The Shape of Water?
Could pull blood from
Or Frances McDormand for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri? Maybe Margot Robbie for I, Tonya? Or Saoirse Ronan for Ladybird? Or even perhaps Meryl Streep for The Post.
Position that would put me in.
Again, Terry, that's a really great list. Are you going to say we're going to get another British win? Sally Hawkins, The Shape of Water? Or maybe Meryl Streep?
Afraid not, no way. This year it's all about Frances McDormand in 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. One of the great dramatic performances of the year.
I start up a database. Every male baby was born, stick 'em on.
I suspect she's right. We'll find out on the 4th of March, when the Oscars are awarded and possibly make history.
You just come back.
If Rachel Morrison wins for her filming work on Mudbound and becomes the first woman ever to win the cinematography category. Will Gompertz, BBC News.
I love him too.
One of South Africa's best-loved musicians, the jazz trumpeter Hugh Masekela, has died at the age of 78. He fled the country in 1960, became a prominent campaigner against apartheid, the system of white minority rule. His song, Bring Him Back Home, calling for the release of Nelson Mandela, became an international anthem for the anti-apartheid movement. Today, President Zuma said Hugh Masekela had kept the torch of freedom alive, as Phumzile Philani reports.
The trumpet has fallen silent. The passing of Hugh Masekela has shocked many across the country and around the world. Bra Hugh, as he was affectionately known, has been described as the epitome of a life lived in full. He was a family man, a world-renowned artist, a philanthropist, and a political activist. The 78-year-old was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2008 and had put up a fierce fight until then, but last October he was forced to cancel all his concerts and focus on his health. Fellow musician and friend Yvonne Chaka Chaka says Africa has lost its greatest treasure.
I think Uncle Hugh was a living legend. He may be gone, but his music will always be there. The world has lost a great icon, the world has lost a leader, the world has lost a comedian, because he was hilarious. Where there was Uncle Hugh, there was just laughter all the time. And I don't know what to say. I'm just heartbroken, I'm upset, but I'll remember all the good things that he did. Whether you were young, whether you're a diplomat, whether you're a king, whether you are a leader or a street person, we were all equal in Hugh's face, and he would greet everybody and talk to anybody.
And I lived in Guinea, I lived in Liberia, I lived in Senegal, so I knew that...
At the height of white oppression in South Africa, for many black musicians, jazz became the soundtrack of the resistance. Masekela was forced into exile as political and racial tensions intensified, but once he had returned, he was determined to make a difference.
I had sourced so much from Africa, and I need to pay it back. And the only way to pay it back, I think, is by making the people see how wonderful they are and how excellent they are.
Hugh Masekela described himself as a troublesome child and spoke openly about the many times music saved his life, even later on at the height of a drug addiction. This picture marks one of the moments it all began, when a missionary who was stationed here in South Africa, Father Trevor Huddleston, gave him his first trumpet. With that, the music legend was born. He was an unlikely ally at the height of racial oppression here in South Africa. Masekela continued to use his voice over the years to speak truth to power.
The musician and campaigner Hugh Masekela, dead at the age of 78. And sad to report, another cultural star is gone. The American fantasy and science fiction author Ursula K. Le Guin has died. She was 88. Probably best known for her Earthsea fantasy series for young adults and for her novel The Left Hand of Darkness, set in a world where gender doesn't exist. The actress Juliet Stevenson just saying on Twitter the Earthsea Quartet is genius. Stephen King called her one of the greats. Much more on the BBC website for you anytime. Thank you very much for watching.